right, guys, welcome to another episode. I'm very excited to bring on a very special guest today. He started this journey in 2013 as a social media intern for Gary V's book, Jab, Jab, Right Hook. And then 2014, he got promoted digital media manager. Then he became brand director of Gary V. Later on, executive vice president. And now he's the president of VeeFriends, which we'll cover a lot and discuss about. Andy, thanks for coming. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to be on your show.
100%. I would be more than happy to, if you can give some more context on the story and how you kind of leveled up in the ladder, how you came to work with Gary as an intern and ended up being the president of VeeFriends.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's in my DNA, and sort of just by way of how I got here today. I have so much passion and appreciation and respect for young college grads, people in their early 20s trying to figure out what their next career move is going to be. I was in a very similar spot where I just had a lot of ambition and ideas and passion, but didn't really have a direction on where I wanted to deploy that. I saw this guy on YouTube talking in a way that I hadn't ever seen anyone really communicate what marketing was or what marketing meant in 2013 or 2014, talking about Facebook was going to really matter and impact how brands were communicating and having a one-to-one relationship with their customers. That guy was Gary Vaynerchuck. I tweeted him and asked for a chance to work for free. He responded to an email after that and we exchanged some more, and I ended up being an intern for his book. And over the course of the next 10 years, I had a crash course in entrepreneurship, marketing, sales, and what it's like to run and grow a personal brand and media company. And after about 8 years of doing that, we transitioned and we launched VeeFriends, which is Gary's intellectual property company with over 250 characters rooted around traits and attributes that Gary believes in, that he wants to inspire in others.
And we'll talk and cover about that and the lessons and everything, but I'm fast forwarding to today, and you're the president of VeeFriends, which is the Gary V's IP project, and it started off as a Web3/NFT project. I was happy and glad to say that I was one of the minters. So from 2021 was the launch of it. I'm assuming you had a lot of work behind the scenes prior to that, but I want to talk more about transforming VeeFriends from being that NFT project, something that is very niche, very focused on and very centric on Web3 and blockchain, crypto, to the IP that you mentioned and to the next Disney, as Gary is always saying. Can you share your process of prioritizing, let's say, the ideas, especially of working with someone like Gary, and the ideas and opportunities that you have? So all of the ideas, all of the opportunities that you have, how you are managing to prioritize it in terms of the long-term vision that you have?
Yeah, so we describe, and even when we first created VeeFriends, like we would call it an NFT project, but the intent was always and is always to grow a modern IP company, events and entertainment, to scale the attributes and characteristics of other VeeFriends characters. In terms of prioritization on what to try to go after or work against, it really just comes down to the business opportunities at hand and the ones in which we feel like we'll do the best job at expanding the IP in terms of exposures to audiences, and then other business decisions of, like, you know, revenue opportunities, things of that nature. We want to do everything. We want to do children's books, we want to do comics, we want to do long form content on social media, on YouTube Kids. We want to do more games, mobile games, video games, collectible card games, Broadway show, amusement park, podcasts, everything that you could think of when you think of like a modern media entertainment events brand. And really it just comes down to where we feel like we have the most in-house capabilities and where we're actually going to get the most bang for our buck in terms of reach and exposure to different audiences.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking both about the financial, obviously, aspect of it, and the exposure in terms of the media itself, as the two main values. And I'm asking that because whether you're a young founder that just started this business and is uncertain about which direction to go because he's just uncertain and he's inexperienced, or even to other more experienced and matured companies like yourself is a great example, because the bigger and more successful you are, the more opportunities you have and the more collaborations people are offering you, etc. So that's why I wanted to really put an emphasis and ask about the mechanism itself and what's your decision making is like in terms of like prioritizing. So you're saying, if I can summarize it, it's the financial aspect. Obviously, it's a business, and the second thing, maybe not in terms of like the priority, but the second thing that you mentioned is exposure on the media.
Yeah, I think about it in terms of brand and attention. Your ability to either, you can decide you want to build on Roblox. You have a certain audience that you feel like you can build on Roblox to build a game. And then there's costs to executing that game. Sort of just weighing how much energy, resources will you have to put in to that platform, to that endeavor, to that marketing objective, and what do you think you'll get out of it? And like you can quickly sort of compare and do some analysis on Roblox or collectible cards and how you can think about building those franchises out.
Mm-hmm. And I want to flip it and ask you, as a young founder, what would you suggest to someone that is looking for, whether it's a partnership, whether it's an episode in a podcast, any sort of ask, I would say, in that matter, whether it's through VeeFriends or any other major project, someone that is interested, what would you suggest him to do in order to maximize his chances
of success?
Yeah.
I think about two things. I think about one, everyone needs teammates. I've met a lot of successful or emerging artists, hip hop artists, singers, songwriters. And a lot of times the biggest thing that they just need is a couple more people around them that can film their TikTok content, that can push them or be in sales meetings. But I think oftentimes they're a little bit too precious or don't have the humility or maybe just forward thinking of, hey, in order to really scale my efforts and my talent as an artist, I need to have 3 or 4 people around me. And then it comes down to having more thoughtful conversations about the economics about it, about the mission and goal. But if you can team up with 1 or 2 or 3 other people, you'll always have bigger and better outputs. So I think it's being forthright about that, and always trying to surround yourself with the people who are capable and enjoy doing the things that you're not as strong at. For example, back to the artists, generally writers, singers, designers, creatives, they don't like to sell. There's a lot of people that can sell, but they don't believe in what they're selling. They need to team up. There's a lot of people that, same with artists and writers, things of that nature, they also probably don't love looking at Google Sheets and financial documents. It's trying to build the perfect squad of skill sets while still always allowing you to stay true to what you're good at, whatever that might be.
So would you summarize it in terms of like, okay, so on the one hand, it's finding the complementary skill set, someone that is complementary to your skill set. That's the first thing. And the second one is, okay, understanding what my skill set is. And you gave an example of an artist and just leveraging that. You gave an example with the media. So these are the two main things that you can, if I can summarize the question, the answer, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. And then lastly, I would just add to always be thinking long term. Always be thinking about 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now as you navigate every business conversation you're happening. It's when you do that, it's a lot easier to be more kind, caring, thoughtful, selfless. And inherently, if you are being kind, caring, thoughtful, selfless in business meetings, you're going to get good business results. People are going to want to come back to you and want to come work with you. And I think having a macro long-term vision creates the freedom and opportunity to be more thoughtful, where in a different world, you might be like, shit, I need to close the sales in the next month or something bad could happen. That's always going to lead to quicker combos and less thoughtfulness.
100%. And to be honest, I'm following Gary for like 6-7 years since I opened my first business. And one of the main things that I took with me, besides the marketing and the practicality, is exactly that soft skills that you're saying and you just mentioned. And you mentioned selflessness, and you mentioned to forward thinking and to be kind. And these are the values that Gary, if we're talking and connecting it to VeeFriends, is integrating with this IP. And I want to talk with you about that in terms of connecting these two. So we have all the values that Gary is preaching to, and he's done that for years in his content. And now he integrated it with the characters, with VeeFriends. Can you elaborate a bit more about that?
Yeah, Gary created, drew, and imagined 250 plus different VeeFriends characters that hopefully can impact and resonate with different audiences. You know, prior to my time on VeeFriends, I spent a lot of my time capturing Gary's message as an entrepreneur, as a motivational speaker, as an innovator, and trying to think about the ways in which I could package that across different platforms so that it could get the most reach and exposure to all different kinds of audiences, whether it was translating it in Mandarin so that people in Taiwan or Singapore or Malaysia could see his content.
Talking about leverage.
Or just cutting up his most viral moments into TikToks in a really consumable format.
And that was back then.
That was back then, and now it's just trying to do it with Headstrong Honey Badger, you know, because of what the characters look like and because it's not defined, or rather limited to just one 49-year-old white male entrepreneur businessman. There's a potential for us to scale even wider than Gary V's reach and have the VeeFriends reach, which could impact a whole new generation of kids and parents and families.
One question that I have regarding that and integrating that, and we've talked about going and maybe starting with Web3 and scaling it out of Web3 with physical toys and a lot of other things that you're doing, collectibles. In terms of the demographic, and you just mentioned it, I'm curious to think about that, especially when you're starting off with leveraging that big of an audience. Who was the specific demographic that you started off with, if any? And what's the current specific demographic? Maybe it varies across obviously the different projects and things that you're doing nowadays, but I'm curious about how it started and how you saw it, and maybe how Gary saw it and you guys came and worked on it.
Yeah. So to start, you know, the VeeFriends community was created off of an existing community, primarily Gary V's community, people that were like-minded individuals around business and marketing and kindness and empathy and following your passions and purpose. Since then, we've sort of evolved into this VeeFriends community outside of Gary V's community. And it's a combination of the same values of Gary V's, but much more focused on family and kids. You know, VeeFriends is yet to really have content tailored and created directly for what I would call 5 to 10-year-olds. Our compete and collect trading cards are definitely aging down the brand, and seeing kids interact with those cards is very, very exciting to me. But I would generally say, you know, we are targeted for every room in the household, but specifically for kids 10 and under.
Kids 10 and under.
Yeah, but I also think that, you know, a good example is with X-Men. You know, I grew X-Men grew up as I grew up. When I was
Got it.
in first grade, kindergarten, I really remember watching the X-Men cartoons on Saturday morning. Flash forward in high school, and I'm watching Wolverine, fight, combat, kill people in
Yeah.
a Marvel movie. They're cussing. It was a different saga era, but I think some of the greatest IPs continue to evolve and grow up with their audiences.
And another thing that I want to emphasize the importance of it, and you touched briefly on it on the previous question, is the importance of the peers and the inner circle that you have. You're working alongside not only Gary, but all the team, the executives that you have and other partners. Obviously, it benefits both sides a lot, and that's the inner circle that you want to be in. For a young founder, a young entrepreneur, a young individual that is eager for just to find like-minded entrepreneurs to start off with, what are some of the things that you would advise on for him to just connect with others? Because that's and just talk a bit about the importance of it and the lessons that you took with you on it, because I genuinely don't think that a lot of young founders understand the importance of who you're surrounding yourself with and how much of an impact it can do for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that young founders, individuals, by the time they're in their early 20s, should really understand and know that, that adage or quote about like, you are the equivalent of the 7 people you hang out with. It's true. Because I've spent so much time with Gary and the people around Gary at VaynerX, who are not just extremely capable operators and executives, but really kind and genuine and thoughtful and nice and caring people, it sort of rubs off on me as well. I become those individuals and traits, and I'm really proud and grateful for that. I think everyone sort of knows to network and to build your network. I think about it in 2 lenses of wide and deep. You want to be able to shake hands with everybody, right? Like growing connections, saying hello, introducing yourself, not being shy, finding out what works for you to really be able to introduce yourself to new people. Go to new events. You don't like events, join virtual events. You don't like virtual events, go on Twitter and just have back and forth with individuals in the subject matter you're really interested in talking about, and do that on a daily basis, and you will have a wider network. What I'm worried about is a lot of people tend to do that and always is on to the next, and they're always trying to chase the quote unquote relevant person versus really taking the time to build depth with an individual. Like it's not just saying hello, it's saying hello and then 2 days later saying have the best day, and then 5 days later say like, hey, I saw you said that thing the other day about Amazon's new NFT project. I thought this might be interesting to you too. Really building personal connections. And I think if you do that over time, you'll see who you resonate with most, who has similar values to you, and then you can build hopefully life lasting relationships that will empower you not just professionally but personally.
Yeah, I think finding the balance between being proactive but genuinely being interested in the person in front of you is something that I dealt with in the past, but just being self-aware of that and understanding it, especially when you're young on and you're doing a lot of mistakes, I think it's something that's very important, and I can totally relate and understand your perspective on it, and I can tell from experience of actually improving and working on it. That's once you and I think it's more perspective than anything else, because sometimes you're very ambitious and you want to pursue goals and you just want to get it and get after it, but you need to understand, especially when you're young, hold your horses. There is a person. Let's see if there is a true genuine connection, and from there on decide if you want to keep on that relationship or not. And once you're doing that, everything changes, and I couldn't agree more. I want to ask about a lesson, maybe something that you can say in terms of like perspective, life, business related, whatever that you learned through the years. If we're speaking about the advantages of spending the time with people around VaynerX and with Gary, so just something that pops into your head, something meaningful that you came across or just shifted you.
There's so much, I think a lot of this, I've never really gone here, but I think the reason why Gary is such a capable entrepreneur who works 18 hours a day nonstop, and I say it like that because that's really what it is. I mean, like 18 hours a day nonstop. Like he's probably taking meetings since 8 a.m. and he's probably not going to stop until maybe 7 p.m. And that's it. Like no lunch, maybe a little bathroom break at some point over the next 12 hours. And he will be dominating every one of those meetings in terms of, communication style, direction, strategy, foresight, concepts. The only way he's able to do that is because he loves himself. Like self-love is the beginning and end to how you need to be able to navigate a professional career. If you really feel confident in who you are and what you're about and what happiness means to you, you can work your ass off. When that gets muddied and you don't understand why you're doing it or what you want to have happen for yourself, it's very quickly that you can become unhappy, not motivated, stressed, anxious, all these other things. And by the way, it's all natural. Like everyone, and it all ebbs and flows. Like one day you think you have it all figured out, and the next day you're like, I don't like any of this. And that's awesome. But you just need to take the time before you plug in and do your work. You have to plug in and work on yourself. And that could be through exercise, meditation, therapy, whatever it is. Like having the discipline to work on yourself will pave the way for everything else to be really easy. There's the quote, self-discipline is the ultimate freedom. And I believe that. If you discipline yourself on what you're about and what you want to achieve, everything else becomes really, 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 really easy. And it's everyone goes through their ebbs and flows, and it's something that I've really, really learned through my personal growth, but also just watching specifically Gary and how he's able to do the things he does. It comes from being able to have an extremely candid and honest conversation with himself about what he likes and what he doesn't like.
Mm-hmm. And just to add on that, I think especially young folks, including myself, it's important to say that it's a process. And you're talking about exercising, meditating, and I will add just experimenting, obviously, because bottom line, no one can figure out, especially when you're young on and you didn't experiment with a lot of things, that self-discipline, maybe obviously it can set up the foundations, and not maybe, that's the most important thing. But in order to test and see what's really lighting something here inside, you need to just experiment and just go and do something. And as cliche as it might sound, that's the truth. And from there on, it will be easier even for you to grow personally in terms of like personal development, because you'll get into so many challenges and difficulties that will harden you and sharpen you more than any exercise. But so yeah, I completely agree with it. Just wanted to add that.
100%. I mean, traveling, I studied abroad in college, and then I traveled abroad afterwards. Studying abroad changed my life just because it was so new and different. All of a sudden it like broke my pattern and I had different ideas and I learned more about myself. It's actually putting yourself in situations you've never been in is the quickest and easiest way to actually learn who you are. Mm-hmm. And generally speaking, you'll be proud of who you are, because I think you'll just learn how capable that you are, that you may not otherwise have felt, because you haven't been put in situations where you just had to react and figure things out.
100%. I totally, I can say from experience, and if someone that is listening has the opportunity to just go abroad, I can't recommend it enough. I'm speaking here from Israel, but every year at least I'm flying out to business conference. 2 years ago it was permissionless. Now last year it was VCon. So definitely, I couldn't recommend it more. I want to talk about not only the good side, but on common mistakes. You're talking obviously with a lot of interns, a lot of young folks out there that are seeking your advice, and just maybe just being around the VaynerX and VeeFriends. What would you say are the common mistakes of young founders that you're seeing in general, I would say?
A lack of practicality, probably, like whether it's a sales goal or revenue goal or how they think they're going to achieve that goal. It's not grounded in reality. You know, I think if you take a step back, you can have a more transparent, honest, and realistic conversation, which will actually be what drives success. You know, like in order to, I mean, there's just a lot of examples, but I think just practicality, being really, really practical about what the goal is that you need to achieve, why is that the goal, and how you can achieve it. And then all of a sudden you can realize you don't actually need a $75,000 marketing budget. You really just need one intern who's willing to community manage and comment and respond on every single tweet related to your product, industry, or vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And then just being, I would say, a tier below founders to the people that are hitting myself up to try and get a job, or people like really looking at their next career move. I think a lot of people never actually take the time to take it a step further and get their ask on a third base. Like, for instance, all my DMs are during like, hey, I want to work at VeeFriends. Are there any jobs? Like, now it's on me to do work for you. Why don't you, I would have loved for that. Instead of just saying, are there any jobs? I'd love to work there.
Just do
Hey,
something and publish it.
yeah. Or I looked online, I didn't see any jobs. If you're not hiring, these are the jobs that I think I'd be really good at. And these are the skill sets that I have. And as an example, here's how I think I could apply it to VeeFriends in this little blog post that I just wrote. Completely different experiences that I would have on the receiving end of that DM.
Yeah. Honestly, I assume that they are putting a bit of context, but if they're not doing even that, so obviously you should start off with that. Yeah, and I'll add more to that, especially when you're reaching out to someone that is very busy. If you got their attention, make sure you get the most out of it, because you might not get a second chance. So do the extra work, be prepared in advance, do whatever you can to impress them and leave a good impression, because eventually maybe you'll have one shot with him, and you want to make sure you can guarantee it, or not guarantee it, but let's say in terms of chances, just maximizing it. So put more than extra work, and do the best that you can do. I wanna shift a bit to Web3. We've discussed a bit about it. I would love to hear your perspective on the current landscape of Web3. I'm sure there are a lot of founders, especially the ones that are in the beginning of their journey and their ventures. They're taking a lot of uncertainty, whether it's from their investors, clients, or just even if they're just starting out, from themselves or the outside market. What's your thoughts currently on the building side of it? I'm not talking about investments. I'm not talking about the crypto ups and downs. None of it matters, at least to me. I'm talking about the building stuff. So how you're seeing the landscape evolves and people that are still building.
Yeah, it's going to continue to be really interesting to watch and learn and see how, whether it's an NFT project or it's a blockchain, how they're really, I would say, garnering awareness and adoption. I think there's going to continue to be more adoption. I think NFT projects are learning and doing a good job generally of learning that they need to expand outside of the core Web3 to get more people into Web3. And generally, I do think it's going to be a long 2, 3, 4 years before we see all the adoption that people have been speculating on and hoping for from 2021 and 2022. But I think it's there. It's just a matter of time, and it's a matter of identifying the right use cases, whether that's ticketing or it's building a direct one-to-one relationship with your consumers. Because you're a luxury brand, you want to be able to verify ownerships of some of the goods they buy with you. I think there's going to be a lot of things that unfold, and it's just going to take time.
So you talked about iterating, maybe about something that is not very centric about Web3. That's the first thing. The second one is maybe obviously being patient, because it will take more time, and we need to persevere and just go through it. The third thing is maybe just and obviously not maybe to find an actual use case, and that's something that applies regardless of the current market conditions. Any other, I would say, practical tip, or maybe just a perspective on how to navigate these times?
I think regardless of what your use case is or what your product is or what you're working on, you will always still want and need a community or a user base or customers. And that's true of even if your product isn't even yet finalized. I never think it's too early to start developing your brand and community and your customer base. And it's also the one thing that money can't buy. You can buy engineers, you can buy a new website, you can buy a new collection contract. These things are black and white. The thing that's not in black and white, that's a lot of gray and magic and time and effort, is brand building. And I would just implore every person that's working in the Web3 space right now as a startup or trying to get through this new era on how and in what ways and why are you communicating your brand to your audiences or prospective consumers.
100%. That's an asset that you want to focus on and to build, regardless of the startup or business that you have. I want to touch a bit about leadership. You're the president of VeeFriends. You're overseeing a lot of employees. What would you say are the lessons that you've learned currently? Maybe I'll just focus on one of them that comes to your head. From all the other previous positions that you've had, currently the biggest one that you had as the president, and how it varies in terms of the position itself.
Of just like leadership advice or like a leadership tactic or like importance of a specific leadership agenda?
I would say the biggest lesson that you had from being the president, and rather than just being the executive of the previous position that you've had, something new that you've learned, although you had a lot of experience, a lot of years leading.
Yeah, it's a good question. Honestly, it's the same whether you're leading a team of 4 people and you're just a project manager, or you're the CEO of a global digital advertising agency. I think the same leadership skills apply. It's just at a different scale.
And what are these values and that you're talking
it's really,
about?
really important for everyone to know what you're trying to achieve and how you're going to achieve. It can be real, and that's something as you grow, the more personalities and expertise you have, the easier it can be to veer away, because Nir has his own vision of what he thinks VCon should look and feel like, because he's an events expert, but it may not align with the mandate set forth. And it's really important to communicate that as the leader of an organization, so that everyone below you understands what the goal is and how we're getting there. You know, it comes down to just transparent communication and making sure that everyone is aligned. And then from there, it comes back to listening to all the staff and employees and teammates and team members you have to understand what they're motivated by, to make sure that they do have the incentives that they want to have in order to achieve the goals that you've set forth.
Definitely. Besides 12 and a half, which is something that I'm sure not enough people have read, especially from the ones that bought it, which other book about leadership would you recommend?
There's so many, like I really like nonfiction books. Like I don't think the biography of Steve Jobs is necessarily a leadership book, but you can learn about bad leadership and good leadership and how different leaders operate. I think anything that Simon Sinek writes is generally really good. I think anything that Seth Godin writes is generally really, really good. Lynchpin, I think that book by him is remarkable. I think there's leadership lessons in almost any book, like you can just try to deduce why was that
Study
person.
good founders.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have much time and we are running out. We're heading to the last section of the rapid questions. So let's just roll with it. We're talking about books. So not necessarily about leadership. Which book would you recommend to your 22 years old self?
Probably my favorite book, which is the biography of Benjamin Franklin by Walter Isaacson.
Which purchase under $100 made the most impact on your life?
A hot yoga class.
Interesting. Sport is also, if we're heading back to the first section of the podcast, definitely. What would you do if you wasn't the president of VeeFriends and pursuing that part of that direction in your life?
I would be trying to tell stories in the ways that I know how that could impact people. Whether that was attached to a product or a nonprofit or a different business venture, I'm not sure, but it would be still rooted in trying to storytell against whatever vehicle or product that I was working against.
If you could sit with a table with 4 people, dead or alive, who would they be? Who would you choose?
Benjamin Franklin, probably LeBron James, Gandhi, and Malcolm X.
Nice. That's one of my favorite questions. Although it's been used a lot, I think it can show a lot about the person. Okay. Anything else that you want to say before we are wrapping up?
Thank you all for listening. I appreciate you having me on here, and I hope to see everyone and yourself at VeeCon 2024. We're announcing the dates and location of VeeCon in about a month's time at the end of August. So super excited for that. And thank you again for having me on your show.
Thank you very much. I learned a lot about it, and I'm sure others will too. Hopefully we'll see some of the people that are listening in VeeCon next year. Regardless, you're more than welcome to follow. You can check out VeeFriends.com, Twitter, across all platforms. And thanks again, Andy. The podcast felt way less than 45-minute time fly by. So thank you and have a great day.
Thanks so much, brother.
Bye-bye.